Hello, YouTubers and fellow tankers. I am Shrine King, and welcome to King's Court, where I will do a review of the Jpanther German Tier 7 tank destroyer of one of the tank destroyer lines that are available. This goes on to like the Waffle Trogger, um, Waffle Trogger, yeah, line that is pretty slick. It's a nice line to actually have. Um, so, what do we cover with this for those that are new? First, thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoy it. And for this, we're going to do like cover the pros, cons, the modules for the tank, along with explain how to best play the tank for performance, kind of going into like a guide aspect, but then also kind of noting what tanks are particularly the ones that you got to watch out for that will typically cause you problems, and then go from there. So, getting right into it, here is basically a stock view of the Jpanther, and you'll see like starting out the gun looks kind of small. Actually, the tank itself looks kind of strange. So pros to the tank: one, it has good camo, and strangely enough, at this tier, it actually has decent armor by angling. So it doesn't seem like it would, but it really does. Mostly, like I said though, it's because of the angle in particular. Now, when I say it has good armor, I mean you can block shots from some of the smaller guns on the field, but big guns, probably not. You might get lucky and get some deflections, but that's about it. The tank is actually fast, so it's able to maneuver and get around in positions, which is pretty good. Starting out, though, it won't be. Obviously, like you saw there, the gun was kind of weak to start. You do get certain or a gun that is actually okay starting out. So really, when you're starting out with this tank, it's not that bad. But once you get to the bigger gun or the biggest gun it has, which is funny because I see it and it looks kind of short, but it's actually great. It is an awesome gun to have, and this thing starts to become really dangerous. So you'll see with no camo, no crew, nothing like that, it's sitting at a 13 camo rating, which means when you have the full camo, the full crew, you're sitting at like 34-ish, right? And then obviously for the modules that you'd want on this, you want the gun rammer. You're probably gonna want camo net, and I personally did use Binox. Mainly because it was nice to have Binox because of the fact that this thing is capable of hiding and staying kind of hidden. So having the view range, it actually allows you to spot for your team. So you see, for this one in particular, you can actually go into two different paths. You can either go into the Jpanther 2 or you can go into Ferdinand. The key thing with those two is they both have similar guns. What's interesting though is the Ferdinand is actually quite a bit slower because it's also quite a bit heavier, and that also means that it has a lot more armor in the front. But with the armor, it does have all this armor, and you'll see I'm looking at it here, and you'll see the weight is pretty significantly higher, but then it says the hull armor in the front is 200 millimeters. The key things to note here is a lot of that 200 millimeters is dealing with where you see plates. So you see those like the upper glacis, and then you see like a flat area in between there that has a plate. The plate there is definitely going to be 200 millimeter. The part that's, and it might be a little bit thicker, but the parts that aren't is the ones that don't have the plates. And the sad part about the Ferdinand is it's all flat. So if anyone has enough penetration, they are going to pen. Whereas the Jpanther 2, what's interesting enough is it does not have the same armor. So you'll see that it has 100 rather than 200, but it has crazy angling. Now, that angling, obviously, that's only going to get you about 150, 160 for that upper glacis, right? And then the lower glacis is basically the same thing. But then, strangely enough, that angle right there is actually sharper. So that actually makes it about 180, 190, but that's not the real kicker about it. The kicker about it is that angle is starting to get into the criteria where it would be a deflection. So the round will actually just deflect right off of you. Now, unless they use premium rounds that are like APCRs, then that was the difference. But the difference here is the Jpanther 2 actually gets to be pretty fast. The top speed, obviously, you can't change top speed. So while it is fast, and it really kind of depends on how you want to play, right? So if you like to be the slower, heavier model where You can be very dangerous in the event that people are pushing you, or just happen to be in the right spot. Then great. But if you want to be able to maneuver around and kind of hide and stuff like that, the Jpanther 2 is probably going to be the better bet for that. So it just depends on which one you're going for. So pros to this tank, as I mentioned, camo. The gun is definitely really good. As you can see here, I'm looking at having a 300 alpha damage gun with over 200 penetration and sitting at 7-second reload. Now that's really good reload. The accuracy is not that great, so I would actually probably list that as a con. And mainly because there's a lot of other German vehicles that it's just, they have really, really good penetration. So here's a good example where I said, hey, I had some armor, but you see that UDIS? Nope, couldn't stop that. The same thing goes for that VK, which that one in particular, I'm kind of shocked. You wouldn't think that would actually go through, but he managed to get a good shot, and you'll see that it's right under my gun mantlet port. So chances are the area around the gun mantlet is actually weaker. But you'll see, hey, I ran up there, and I'm like, nope, never mind. My team's not going to really spot. They're going to kind of let that go, so yeah, I ain't going to stay there. So you'll see I'm able to maneuver around. So that's another pro to this thing. As I mentioned, it was fast. It's actually able to get around. Now, given I'm not running around at like 70 kilometers like the Jpanther can, it's just, hey, you're able to get up to the 40 kilometers, and the engine's strong enough that it can get you there pretty quick. So, you will note that I do have, or actually, then let's go into some of the cons. So some of the cons is you are very dependent on your team, right? One of the main reasons why I do run Binox is because this thing does not have very good view range at all. So as you can see, currently as I'm running around, it looks like I'm sitting at maybe 350 kilometers view range out of the 450 max that you can have. Most scouts will be sitting at probably like 390, 400, and then probably boosting theirs out to like 440, 450. So having the Binox gets you closer, but it still will not be perfect. You're probably looking at getting up to like 430 maybe. So yeah, you're really dependent on your team. That's one of the cons to this tank, just not having that view range to be able to kind of help or do things yourself. Now, that said though, the other con is the radio is not amazing. So as you can see here, I'm able to see the maximum is 450, and it looks like I have maybe another 100 meters, so I'm only looking at 550 range on the radio. There are other tank destroyers that are out there that have like over 650, maybe even getting close to 700, and that's kind of ideal of what you want. So you'll see here though, another pro, the aim time is pretty good, right? So I'm able to focus in and aim relatively quickly. The 7-second reload is awesome on the gun, and like I said, the damage from the gun is just awesome. But here I am, I'm sitting here, and again, I can't even see the guy that's farther north here, the heavy, because my damn radio can't reach that far. So that's really kind of a significant con, is not having that radio range that you really want in a tank destroyer, because it really is very helpful as a tank destroyer to have that extra radio range to be a sniper. Now, that said, as I mentioned, right, now if we're talking about guide kind of stuff here, this is really kind of a team player kind of tank, right? You want to be able to focus with your team. Now here you'll see that projectile speed is actually pretty darn good, man. It does get there. And I don't like to see look at this. I'm like, oh, how did I miss that? Now you'll notice as I'm looking around, which by the way, you should always do this, right? Even though you see the guy, don't just assume that whole silhouette is purely exposed, right? You want to kind of like move it around a little bit, make sure, because it'll tell you like, oh, nope, actually I only see the top half of him and only the back half, right? That means, hey, that circle, even though it looks pretty good, I don't really have a good, like really good chance. Now here I nail his track. All right, well, you know what, whatever. I get the assistance on it. That's great. Now, the other thing though that is a pro to this thing is you'll see I'm able to turn my haul pretty quick. I'm able to go left, go right, whatever I need to do. That's cool. That is very helpful, especially when you run into those nasty little lights that like to try to run circles around you. They don't realize, hey, I can just turn just as fast as you. It's okay, right? So there's a lot of those kind of scenarios where you can actually punish a light. Now, given though a lot of those scenarios, typically when it's coming down to that, yeah, you're probably not going to win anyway. But you can actually pull off getting most likely another shot into them, so that helps your team overall. So, um, noting the pros and the cons, right? One of the things that I'm trying to answer is kind of like, is it worth it? Well, personally, I think the Jpanther line is the better bet. Now, the Waffle Trogger, the endgame Waffle Trogger, in Tier 9 Waffle Trogger, so Tier 9, Tier 10, they are pretty awesome. And I can really see the allure to them, so I understand people going for them, and I don't blame them for it. But I will say this, having that JPEG E100 where it's on the battlefield, it tends to just make people say, oh crap, there's an E100. We got to deal with that one. Right? Because it's scary. It's scary getting knocked for over 1,000 hit points of damage. It's the same effect that an FV 4005 has. The only difference is the FV 4005, they're like, oh, once it shoots, everybody can shoot and pen it. Any artillery can hurt it. Yay! Whereas in the JPEG, they're like, damn, man, this thing's got ridiculous armor. Someone get behind it, please. Right? And you just hope they don't have a team to help them, because if they do, it's so hard. Right? To me, that's probably the better worth it line overall. Now, that said, you want to be able to kind of depend on yourself and kind of maneuver around and really work the field. Yeah, the Waffle Trogger is really going to be probably the better one for that, right? The JPEG, it's slow at the end of the game. It's not really all that fast, but darn if it don't really help by knocking through players one by one because of just the big hit. And I'm imagining too with the gun on it, it's probably got much less accuracy. And I will say the Waffle Trogger is a wonderful sniper because it has one of the best accuracies in the game. Actually, I think I did check it. It is the best accuracy in the game. So, yeah, that covers most of the gist of this. When it comes to modules and stuff like that for the tank, radio is super, super important. I understand people are going to want the guns and stuff like that. Absolutely. Try to figure out your best balance based on the tier. But radio is absolutely important. If you don't have a radio, you can't see the targets that you need to shoot. And if you have to get too close, you're already screwing yourself because you've got to get too close to be able to shoot the target. And instead, you're just going to get spotted and killed anyway. So what does it matter at that point? What good is a gun if you're dead? And in the same sense, for the guide, though, like I said, try to play with your team. Try to help your team where you can. So you'll see here, I'm trying to help my teammate. Yeah, he's kind of screwed. There isn't really too much I can do. Now here I kind of make a mistake. I go charging into this guy. Well, actually, no, I take it back. I did decide not to. So I did shoot him. I did nudge him a little bit. I should have probably just rammed him because I would have done a lot more damage that way because it technically is a little heavy. Now, let's talk about tanks to be scared of as the Jpanther. One, any tank with good camo and good view range is going to be a problem for you, right? Which means the lights, right? The lights are definitely the ones that you want to watch out for. They can come hunting for you, and because you don't have good view range, if you don't have a team really to assist you, you're already kind of screwed, right? So really focus on trying to make sure at least that either one, you're out of the area for the light, or two, that you're going to take out the light when you get the opportunity because they are going to be a problem for you. Two, artillery, obviously, right? As most tank destroyers know, if you get spotted or it gets identified where you are, or even if it's not that, right? It could be just from general selection of where you're shooting. If people are calling it out and you're being a pain, and this thing can be a pain, by the way, what can happen is people will say, hey, there's only so many bushes over there. Chances are you're hiding there. They'll call it out to artillery, and artillery will blind fire. So, what do you note there? If you're in a bunch of bushes and there's a bunch of trees and stuff like that, they don't really know exactly which one you're in or how far forward or back you are. So you're probably okay there. But if there's literally only like one tree or one bush or something like that, you want to be a little careful. A lot of times it's, stay farther behind. And by the way, for those that don't know, is playing as a tank destroyer player. Actually, he's playing as any tank, right? If you have good enough camo, right, and you'll see here, I can see all the trees, right? Because I can see all the trees, that means all of those are giving me a camo bonus. Anyone who's trying to see me through that, even when I fire, I'm still getting all that camo bonus. Now, if I was up close enough to these trees, they would start to go transparent. or be purely visible through, right? So like that little bush right there that I'm in right now, when I go to look, I can actually see through it, right? It's transparent. That means when I fire my gun, I lose the camo bonus from it. So I will not have all of that in benefit. So if you're hiding in a bush, bear in mind, when you fire, you're not hiding in a bush. You have to wait 5 seconds basically to be re-hidden in a bush, right? So for that period of time, you are at the lowest camo rating you possibly have. Now, that said, if you roll behind the bush, farther away from the bush to where it now becomes visible like these trees, then you absolutely are hiding through the bush basically. Not really in it, but now the question is, are people going to be running up on you to where they could see you, or are you just staying hidden from the line of people that you know are out there? So the other thing is, as you can see here, I'm lining up, and rather than trying to get to where I can definitely see the person, I'm going to try to work off the silhouette, right? And I'm using the trees to protect me from hopefully being spotted, because even a T-29's got good view range. So bear that in mind. Now, back to like things that are going to be a problem for you. The autoloaders are typically a problem, usually because they're most likely going to track you or try to track you. Getting tracked is definitely a big weakness into this tank. Because of the fact that you have no turret, if you are tracked, they've pretty much screwed you, right? So they have a very good opportunity to destroy you simply because there's not much you can do unless they're directly in front of you waiting for you to shoot them, which most likely they ain't going to do that. Mobility tanks are definitely a problem, so if they can get around you and stuff like that, that becomes a problem. But most likely, honestly, with a lot of tank destroyers, there isn't really any particular tank you're like, oh, I totally gotta watch out for that. What I will say is if you're trying to compete, right, so like for whatever reason you're getting down to the knit and grit and you don't really have a team to support you and you gotta try to fight, right? The ones that you don't want to fight, right, the ones that you need to be defensive, let them come to you and try to fight you, is stuff like the Sturvs, right? So the Sturv lines, they have super camo, they can stay activated with their freaking eyes. So only when they have to try to come like maneuvering around and come after you, that's the only time they're really going to be able to be spotted, right? So those are definitely ones that you want to be a little more careful about. And that kind of goes even like at this particular tier, you can see the Sturv. Actually, you can see the tier 9 and the tier 8. You also have the IKV, which is the tier 7. That one does not have to go into a mode, so that one you want to be a little careful about because it is maneuverable and it has a weird like depression angle, so it can shoot around hills and stuff. But the nice part about that one in particular is that it is also a hauled tank. So if you actually track it, you can actually go past it, right? And then as long as his track isn't repaired, you can bully him just the same way he could bully you. So bear in mind, he can do the same thing to you. So you just want to be careful of that. Now, yeah, I mentioned like all the other fast moving. Let's see, other tank destroyers that you would want to be careful. Actually, you know, anything with a super gun, obviously, right? So like ISU 152, even the heavies that got super guns and stuff like that. Now, one thing to note is because of the gun that you have for the tier, heavies aren't really that big of a deal. So like here you can see I'm seeing the side of the T-29 and his turret, right? That's pretty solid armor on that turret, even on the side. Still can pen it. But you definitely want some premium rounds on you. And I say premium, and I'm sorry, it's not really premium anymore. Just the more expensive rounds, the ones that do higher damage, right? Or I'm sorry, not higher damage, have higher penetration. You want to keep some of those because, especially nowadays, there are heavies out there that just have ridiculous amounts of armor. So there's a perfect example of being able to bounce a shot. So you see he has 115 damage. That means he actually had like 120 or 130 penetration. He couldn't pen me, right? So this is where it says, hey, you know what? I have 85 millimeter armor, but when you include all the angling, it does come around to that. And here you go. 721 damage, Bob, blowing him up. So that's another thing to note that's kind of nice about this gun. Because it's at the 300 damage mark, it actually does good module damage, which means you can ammo rack people. Now here's a case where, you know what, I'm able to stay hidden. Well, no I wasn't. I take it back. I tried. I used the trees, and I was hoping based on angling there that he would not get to see me. But, he's actually a good spotting tank. So here, and this is another thing to bear in mind, kind of like strategy-wise, sometimes bait your target, right? He wants to come kill me. I know I'm a one-shot kill for him. No point in me coming out after him. Let him come to me, right? He's got to come out. Any tank that's got a turret like that, they typically end up having to expose their front side before they can actually get a shot on you. Now, mind you, it's like a split second, so you want to be very careful. But it is a split second, an opportunity, and it's all you need, right? Especially when you got like a 300 damage like gun, right? So I knew I was a one-shot kill for him, but he's a one-shot kill for me. So, what you're seeing here is honestly, this is like an ideal fight. Now, sadly though, I do apologize. I was really hoping to have a video of a quality fight where I could show you playing the Jpanther against the higher tiers, right? The highest tiers that I can possibly go against, right? So tier 9s. Because honestly, what I will say is, general gist of the rule, when we talk about tier 9s, being bottom tier, bear in mind, you know what? It is what it is. You are against the hardest ones to possibly face. So imagine they're going to be the hardest ones possibly to face. What I can tell you is, of tier 9, most mediums, most tank destroyers, most lights, actually I'm pretty sure almost all the lights, you can penetrate with your normal rounds. That said, there are definitely some mediums, some tank destroyers, and then a lot of heavies that will block your rounds. And that's when you want those premium rounds. Now, that said, bear in mind, even with premium, I think you only get up to like maybe 200 something penetration. Things like the T95, right? Yeah, you're not really going to probably pen that guy. The Object 257, yeah, you're not going to pen that. Who else? The VK4502 Bravo, probably not going to pen that, right? Now, get the sides of them, absolutely. You still can pen them. And actually, you probably don't even need the premium round. Maybe on the T95 you might, but most of them you probably won't. So, that's really the gist of the tank. That's kind of the gist of what you're going to run into for things to kind of worry about. The only other thing I would say to maybe worry about is if there's a particular tank that's somehow doing similar alpha to you as you, but has better reload speed. And I can't think of any in particular, besides the actual, like, for example, like the IKV, right? He has similar, right? So he's at like 240, and he does reload pretty fast. I think he reloads at like 5 or 6. So, for example, in a fight where if I had like 300 hit points, and maybe he had 350 or 400, I wouldn't want to go fight him, right? Just bear that in mind, because the idea is, I would get one shot into him by the time he got 2 shots, which means he would exceed my health before I could exceed his. I'd have to hope for some assistance or a crazy good high roll. The other thing to bear in mind is like the IKVs, right? So here you'll see, bam, I actually got a shot in him. Now here's the reload, right? Okay, and yep, he's got it, right? So this is a case where, yeah, I probably should have backed up rather than move forward to just hopefully get around that corner and get the angle, and I didn't do that. But I hope this kind of gives you a good gist of how to play the Jpanther, the benefits of the Jpanther, and I definitely feel it is very worth it. I will say this, the tier 6 was amazing tank to me. Once I got the top gun in this one, it really started becoming a shining star to me. But you always want to remember, use the cover. Use a lot of cover as much as possible. Bushes, trees, things like that. Keep yourself hidden. Stay farther behind. Support your team. It's really good for that. You can play kind of aggressive, as you saw here, when you need to, but you shouldn't really have to, and hopefully you're not really running into a lot of scenarios where you have to. It just turned out my teammate here was kind of special. But anyway, again, if you like this stuff, please like, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there's particular tanks that you'd like to see, hear about, whatever. And you know what? I also do things to like kind of review different events that are going on and kind of tell you like my thoughts on like, was it worth it? What was the best parts of it? Stuff like that. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you next time. Feel free to continue watching. It'll show the kind of like scores and stuff like that from that fight. And thank you so much.